This podcast is going to be a lot around money, finance, and the empowerment of women. So important themes, because I don't know about you, Patty, you can find people who are educated, got a lot of good grades, everything else, but they're not good with money. And there's a real problem in terms of education. You're taught mathematics, you're taught algebra, you're taught fractions, all of that kind of stuff, but you're not taught financial literacy to help you in the big world of business, investing, wealth creation. What's your thoughts? And before we get into that, tell the audience about your background and who the real Patty is.
Sure. I moved from Iran when I was 7 years old, when the revolution occurred, just like everybody else. And unlike the other Iranians that moved here, my family came with a small nest egg, lost it very quickly in bad business dealings. So most of the Iranians that are in the US grew up very privileged. And that's not my background at all. After my parents lost their nest egg, we didn't have any money. We were living in a one-bedroom apartment. It was me, my parents, and my brother. And we really struggled to make ends meet. I didn't speak the language at all when I came. So that was also a huge barrier. I made it through, luckily. I was dyslexic. I have ADHD. And back then, they didn't diagnose you with stuff like that. It was just, she talks too much in class. She can't pay attention. She can't do any of this. But I think one thing that us Iranians have is a determination and perseverance. And education is really huge for us. The joke is you're either a doctor, a lawyer, or engineer, or a disappointment. And I chose being a lawyer. I went to law school and I was a prosecutor for 5 years in Chicago. I moved to Los Angeles in 2001 and I just fell into finance by accident. It wasn't something I intended to do, but I was waiting for my bar results and I'm like, you know what? Why don't I give finance a shot? An opportunity came up and the rest is history.
Yeah, fascinating. And I can relate to a lot of what you said because I came from nothing. And my dad came over. He married my mum, very young age. He was 24, she was 17. Very different culture. My mum's half English, half Scottish. And unfortunately, the world of business didn't work out for him. He also did stuff. He was a qualified optician, but he just, one thing didn't work out, then another. Then we had the exchange rate mechanism crisis in the UK, where interest rates all of a sudden on houses went from a few percent to 15% in a day. And if you want a variable
crazy
rate, yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And it was a perfect storm at the time. My mom had a stroke. My dad lost the business. And then the house was in trouble as well. But he kept it together despite being by himself with no family here. And his testimony of character. So I can understand what you're saying on that. And I did know that quite a few Iranians that went to, say, Los Angeles in particular, they tended to be more of the wealthy type. Would that be a fair generalization or not? The initial ones anyway, when the revolution was happening.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it's important to know that I didn't grow up in Los Angeles. So we first moved to Beaumont, Texas, because as an immigrant, you go where you have family. This podunk town where Footloose was based, right? That's Beaumont, Texas. We first lived there for a year and then my mother just couldn't take it. So we moved to Houston and I went through junior high in Houston and then we moved to Colorado Springs when I was a freshman in high school. And I went to undergrad in Colorado. I went to law school in Chicago. And then I moved to LA. So I was familiar with the LA Persians, quote unquote. And this is no disrespect to them, but they were known as the posh, the chic, the ones that were worried about the types of car you drove. And I didn't grow up around any of those people. So when I came to LA, it was really a shock for me. It was welcoming because my parents had passed by the time I moved to LA. So your parents are typically like the glue to the culture that you have. And once they pass, I kept searching for that glue. And when I moved to LA, there's such a huge Iranian population. We have Tehrangeles, there's Iranian food, everyone's speaking Farsi. So that was really great for me. But I still, to be honest, find difficulty fitting in with the Iranians in LA. I have a few Iranian friends, but most of my friends are Americans, and that's just because that's who I grew up with.
Yeah, I'm half and half British, half Iranian. And I've said this before. Sometimes some people say it's the best of both worlds. Other times you're not fully one or another. But my heart is always being Iranian in terms of the whole draw towards it, how I've always wanted to keep my focus on it, my love for it. And I think probably your childhood has a big influence in your life, whether good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Right.
think I remember those 4 years during the war period, etc. And the sense of big family there was. So you didn't have a sense of mortality with the bombs dropping, etc. Because you're a
Mm-hmm.
kid playing with your little soldiers hearing the sirens. But I think going from that warmth and passion and the big family to the UK, where it was the complete opposite. It was very Victorian.
Right.
Keep your emotions
Yes.
within, in terms of my mum's side of the
Yep.
family. And I think you search for something. So you did it in terms of the Iranian thing in becoming a lawyer. So straight away, you probably got bonus points there
Yes.
from the parents. I can also relate to that because I studied law, but much to my dad's disappointment, I didn't go into law. It wasn't for me. I had visions of O.J. Simpson, that type of lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I was in the United States, I probably would have gone all the way. In the UK, it's very much more stuffier, wear a wig and all that kind of stuff.
Yes. Yes. The
And the
whole thing. Yeah.
solicitors, yeah, and the solicitor side is very admin based. So you qualify as a lawyer, you're a prosecutor. What then made you want to do a career pivot into the world of finance, etc.? Talk us a little bit about that.
Sure. So I had moved to LA, and like I said, I was waiting for the bar results, and luckily I had passed. But before that, I went to a job fair with one of my friends, and it was for some finance sales positions. And I just went to support him, and I was waiting at the door for him to come out, and Wells Fargo was there. And I just started speaking to the guy at Wells Fargo. He found me interesting, and we were talking. And he said that we have positions open in the merchant services department. And that means the credit card processing. So essentially, it was a job to get businesses to do their credit card processing through Wells Fargo. And I was like, I'm a lawyer, dude. I'm not going to be like schlepping credit cards. That was like my thought process initially. But then as I spoke to him, I realized that there were so many growth opportunities within the organization. And everyone had always said that I should be in sales because I was a prosecutor. And as a prosecutor, there's a lot of transferable skills. Like you have to know your case, you have to sell your case to the judge or to the jury, you have to overcome objections. So it's really a sales job. And most people don't understand that. Spoke with him, and he's, yeah, if you do well within 6 months, you could be a territory manager. And then shortly after that, you can become a regional manager. And then I started thinking that, you know what? This could be a long-term play. I'm like, why don't I try it? If it doesn't work out, I can just go back to being a lawyer at any given time. So I said, I'll give it a shot. And I have to tell you, like the first couple months, it was grueling. I really hadn't been in sales before. So that was the learning curve, going door to door, trying to get people to buy credit cards with this like 25-pound credit card machine. That's what it was back then. But with a lot of hard work and perseverance, after 4 months, I was the number one salesperson in the country. And then 2 months later, I became a territory manager. A few months after that, I became the regional manager. And then I just moved my way up through the bank in different areas. So I've been in traditional banks. I've done investment banking. I raised money for private equity funds. And now I'm SVP of mergers and acquisitions financing at a bank. So that's really how it came about.
Interesting. So would you say you're an intrapreneur or an entrepreneur?
It depends. I think I'm an intrapreneur, but I think I'm also an entrepreneur because I've also pivoted into the world of content creating, and my media career luckily is taking off and going to where it needs to go. So I think I'm a little bit of both.
Because the traditional employee model is dying in the
Hmm.
face of the fourth industrial revolution with AI and automation. And you're going to have to be more of either an intrapreneur or an entrepreneur. A successful intrapreneur is Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple. He worked
Hmm.
his way all the way to the top. And a lot of people want to be an entrepreneur. That's the fad, that's the craze, that's the fashion. They
Hmm.
see all these entrepreneurs on Instagram and TikTok and social media, your likes of Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, and everybody wants to use that term. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm this, I'm that, because they associate it as living the dream.
Right.
But they don't realize that 94% of entrepreneurs never even earn past six figures.
Absolutely.
Only 2% earn past seven figures.
Yeah.
And 95% of all businesses will fail within 10 years, if not a very high
Hmm.
figure within the first 5 years. So you have to be
Right.
a special type of person with all of those stats. If you said that in any line of life, in anything in life, and
Hmm.
gave you those stats, you'd run for the hills. So you have to
Right.
have that little bit of craziness to you as an entrepreneur in terms of
Yes.
conviction of what you're doing and everything that goes with it. But with that being said, you can do extremely well in life being an intrapreneur, and especially if you're an investor. I don't think I'm much of an investor, really. I've got more entrepreneurial kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Whereas if you can be a savvy investor, you can do so well. Because I think, I don't know if you agree with this, a lot of people know how to make money, but they
Hmm.
don't know how to create wealth.
Absolutely. Yeah, and here's the thing is you said something to be a savvy investor, and I think that's the biggest misconception about investing, that you need to be savvy and you don't. There's a tried and true method of investing, and that is set it and forget it. That is the tried and true method. A lot of people think that, oh, you have to know about the stocks. The top stock pickers that get paid millions of dollars, okay, to pick stocks, don't know what they're doing. One quarter they're up, and literally, if you look at the stats, the next quarter, like the one quarter, they're in the top 25. Then the next quarter, or even the next year, they're in the bottom 25. So it's just luck. Even Jim Cramer, the person that gets paid millions of dollars to pick stocks, he's only right 47% of the time. And a lot of people are like, well, 47% is not bad. No, it is, considering that if you were to flip a coin, you have 50% shot, right? So his picks are less than if you were to flip a coin and decide based on that. So you don't have to be a savvy investor. What you need to do is, and I've always said this, is you need to buy ETFs and index funds. And those are a pool of funds. And the reason that's good is because you don't have just one stock, it's diversification. And you buy every single month and you set it and forget it until you retire. And that's all you need to do. There is no magic bullet. You do have aberrations where someone got in to Tesla early or Apple early, but those are aberrations. And by the way, Tesla was a month from going bankrupt. So individual stocks can go to zero at any given time. Even Apple, they're like, oh, what's going to happen to Apple? Let's say they put out the next iPhone and it starts exploding in people's faces. What's going to happen to Apple stock? So anything like that, or Jeff Bezos, even Amazon. What if something happens and you find out that they've been committing fraud? So even Amazon can go to zero. And that's why you don't want to do that. You don't need to be a savvy investor. You just need to know what to invest in and be consistent and just do it over time. Time is your biggest asset when it comes to investing.
Yeah, so many good points, because there is this, and I said it myself, there is this kind of conception that you have to be a savvy investor. You have to know your
Right.
onions. But now how you've
Yep.
broken it down, it makes sense. It's almost like the law of averages. As long as you
Right.
spread bet it across, then eventually you'll have your wins. But I think the problem is as well, a lot of it is psychological, isn't it, with people? It's either they want something huge and now. So that's why the
Sure.
big crypto fascination has happened. A lot of Iranians love crypto, by the way. And they feel, I could be a millionaire fairly quickly with this if I invest in
Yeah.
Ethereum and Solana and whatever stock there is.
Yeah.
Because they see on social media and people saying, oh yeah, I invested in Bitcoin and here driving around with the Rolls
Yeah.
Royce and all that kind of jazz. The
Right.
other, I think, psychological mindset is, oh, I just don't know enough. I just don't really understand it. So
Right.
therefore, it's too risky and I'm not going to do it. And I'll just leave it. I'll do it someday. So there is
Right.
that kind of reward versus risk. That does your desire for change outweigh your fear of risk?
Correct. And if you are in the stock market for 15 years, the studies show that you have 0% chance of losing your money. 15 years, 0% chance. Yes.
Well,
So it takes about 10 years to beat the cyclical market of the cyclical nature of the stock market. So you got to be in it for 10 years. It's going to go up and down, but it goes up and down and it eventually goes up like this. And after 15 years, you have 0% shot of losing your money if you're invested in it. Okay. So that's one thing you need to know. And then again, everyone wants to get rich quick. Everybody sees these aberrations, and these are aberrations. And that's what people don't understand. And there's a place for crypto. I own Bitcoin. Okay. I have individual stocks. I have a position in Tesla. I have a position in Apple. But the money that I have in those types of investments are money that I'm willing to lose. Because again, it could go to zero at any given time. Those investments are not my like, oh, I'm going to get rich. Those are, hey, if it goes up, great. I'll make great money, but that's not my core investing. And I think that's when people have to know, yeah, you could have some crypto. I own Bitcoin. I bought Bitcoin when it was 14,000 and now it's skyrocketed. But still, I'm not touching it. It's just, okay, I'm just going to let it ride. But that's not my main core investment portfolio.
people will say, oh, but Patty, I don't have money to do that because the vast majority of people are surviving rather than thriving. I think there was a
Sure.
stat here in the UK that 80% of people, Lloyd's Bank did the study or released some information about this, I think, and they said 80% of people had less than £600 in their bank account.
Right. So my response to that is you don't have the money not to do that. Okay. So you can invest with as little as $5 a month. You can invest with as little as $10 a month. And that's one thing that people don't get. And if you truly do not have that $5 or that $10, get a side hustle. Drive an Uber one day a week, and that will give you $100 extra that week. So you can put that toward investing. You don't have to do a lot. You don't have to invest a lot. You just have to be consistent. And you're like, okay, what am I going to buy with $5 or $10? You can buy the top stocks with $5 or $10 if you are on a platform that allows you to buy fractional shares. And Fidelity does that, Schwab does that. I think other platforms do. And this is the secret is that when you buy fractional shares, that means you can buy a fraction of the stock of Apple. So if the Tesla stock that's $300 is too expensive for you, I get it. You can buy a fraction of that share. You can buy very little of that share. So just do whatever you need to do to get $5 together, $10 together, whatever you can get together, and just start investing. Because if you invest $100 a month, after 40 years, you're going to have $535,000 when you retire. $100 a month.
Yeah, see, people don't think of it like that.
Of course not. Yeah.
I think a lot of people think is they say they don't have the money, but then when you say invest $5 or $10, they then have another psychological mindset of, yeah, I don't have the money, but that's not going to be enough to have the money that I want. So I don't have the money to
Right.
invest. But if I do invest $5 or $10, I'm not really interested because I'm not really going to get anything for that I want.
Yeah. And because they don't understand compound interest. They don't understand how compound interest works. So when you don't understand that, and that is the pauper mentality, unfortunately, is that you're always going to find a reason as to why it is somebody else's fault that you don't have the money. You're not going to be wealthy. You're not going to be successful. It's always somebody else's fault. And you don't see the big picture. And instead of saying, just looking at the numbers don't lie, right? Like I said, if you were to invest $100 a month, at the end of the time you retire, you're going to have $535,000. Just look at the numbers. I'm not making that up. But the fact that people aren't even willing to do that, it's really a poor person's mentality, and they need to get out of it if they ever want to succeed, especially financially.
Yeah, it's that scarcity mindset versus an abundant mindset. And,
exactly.
And the thing is, at times, it can be handed down from generation to generation until someone makes that break. And a lot of it, you're a product of your environment. You're a product of your environment.
True.
Unless you change your environment and those around you, you're going to be sucked into it and it's going to curtail you. What some people would say, all right, that sounds great. I think a lot of people don't have the discipline or the consistency to do that. So it sounds great 40 years. The problem is life gets in the way, and then, may have lost my job, or actually I could really do with a holiday, or where can I cut back on? Maybe I'll stop that. It's not that much we've got at the moment, and I'll do this and that. Mm-hmm. And that's where the consistency and the discipline is not there, unless you just completely forget about it almost. And it's just there. I'm not even going to think I have it. Let it just grow, blah, blah, blah. And then one day I'll have a sneaky look, etc. Is it? Some people would say, and I've heard this through a friend of mine who's quite a big influencer when it comes to business on social media, etc. And he's a multimillionaire, and he says that don't invest in stocks, right? Buy a business. Buy businesses.
Interesting.
I've invested in 70 businesses. He said stocks are all well and good for middle classes. Yes, they can make good money, the middle class. But if you really want to make money in life, start a business or buy a business. What's your thoughts?
I disagree. I'd like to know, of all the businesses that he's invested in, how many of them have failed, A. And because that's very important. You gave the stats as far as what percentage of businesses fail. And you have to really be knowledgeable of understanding financial models to invest in businesses. What I do is I analyze financials of businesses to determine whether they're viable for lending options. So someone wants to buy a business. This is what I do for a living. Someone wants to buy a business. They come to me. They say, hey, Patty, I want a loan to buy this particular business. I do the analysis and I figure out, hey, is this business worthy of the loan or not? Okay. So this is what I do for a living. And 9 times out of 10, the business is not worthy of a loan. And the problem is that I am a professional. Like, I am trained to understand business models. I am trained to understand financials. 99.9% of people are not trained to do that. So they put their money in businesses and they lose. And let me give you a perfect example. So one of my friends, whose name I'm not going to mention, made a lot of money with his core business. He had a business that he created and made a lot of money with it. And I'm saying a couple of $1 million. Okay. So with that $1 million, with this couple of $1 million, he all of a sudden thinks that he is an investor now. And he wants to invest in businesses. Okay. So he sends me businesses and I just put $250,000 in here. I just put $300,000 in here. And I look at these businesses, Johnny, and these businesses, unfortunately, are going to fail because they don't have a track record. Their cash flow isn't there. They don't have projections. Their projections are not correct. I wouldn't give a dime to these businesses as far as my day job is concerned. So yeah, you might get lucky here and there, but generally investing in businesses is not for the masses, I would say.
Yeah, he is in a kind of position, or people like him at times, they've done really well out of a company they've started. Say they've become a multimillionaire, sold to a bigger company,
Right.
and then it's almost like gambling money, where they're just,
Sure.
I'm going
Right.
to invest in this startup and hope
Sure.
that
Right.
the VC mentality of, I'll invest in 20 startups, 19 will fail, but that one big one
Right.
will out compound everything else.
Correct.
But
Correct.
there is now the philosophy that there is the thinking when it comes to business, a lot of things, if you think about it, has already been said or done. So you could say, I'm going to start this business. And then before you Google it, and someone else has got it, or someone else is doing it, or I'll start this, but because there's a lot of businesses out there. And unless you're an inventor or some IT maestro or someone in the world of medicine or something, it's that Richard Branson quote. If you're not going to do something different, do something better in terms of spotting the gap. So some people say you're better off now, instead of starting a business, buy a business. Buy an established business that has the right reasons they're selling, in terms of, some people say it's for retirement or you don't want to hear about it, but for health reasons. It's a high barrier to entry.
Yes.
It's created itself a moat in terms of competition, because those businesses where it's a low barrier to entry, say dog grooming businesses, where it's easy to get, you can be swallowed up
Amazon
the next
sales.
Day. Yeah. Or it hasn't got a recurring income, where it's got passive income, recurring income coming through. What's your thoughts on that in terms of financials, of people that think, you know what, maybe I don't want to start a new business. Maybe I should buy an established business, or do you think still investing in the way we spoke about in stocks and shares is probably better than all of that?
I still think investing is better than all of that. And here's why. Because good luck finding the business that is strong, that cash flows, that there's a high barrier to entry, and that you can afford to buy. And the most important thing missing, that you have experience to run. Because you could have all of those things, but do you have the expertise to run a business? That's the first thing I ask people when they tell me they want to buy a business. I'm like, okay, do you have industry experience? Have you ever run a business before? And if you haven't, how do I know you're not going to run this business into the ground? If you don't have industry experience, it's not easy to run a business. That's one of the hardest things you will ever do, is to run a damn business. And people just think it's so easy. Especially one thing that I get a lot of requests for are FedEx routes, because people think that, I'm just going to buy a FedEx route. I'm going to keep my job. It's just going to run itself. And yeah, you would think, that can't be too hard. It is so hard to run that business. You have to understand logistics. You have to understand automotives. I'm sorry. You have to understand how the balance sheet of these businesses work, how you're getting paid through FedEx. It is so complicated. And people just think, I'm just going to buy a FedEx route on the side. That's going to be my side hustle. And 9 times out of 10, those people fail. So if the pieces are there, if you have business experience, if you understand business financials, if you know how to run a business, if you have all that together, sure, you probably will do great running a business. I'd still do both. I wouldn't say either or. But if that's not you, then don't think that's another get rich quick scheme. That's not going to happen.
Yeah. And I think because a lot of people just don't want to work anymore. They want to live the dream. They want to just
the laziness,
live the La Dolce Vita. etc. Because a lot of people do say when you do run a business, great, must be living the dream. They don't realize the sacrifice, the late nights, the constant pressures, everything that goes with it.
Correct.
And you have to be a special type of personality to deal with the pressure, especially if you come from an employee route where you've got that mindset where you're going to get paid every month, barring,
Right.
well, you still get paid because you have a notice period, etc. Whereas when you have a business, you can go months without getting paid. It depends if you're going
Of
for a lean
course.
period or a good period, then all the taxes and everything that goes with it. But nevertheless, those that do businesses is because they've got this maverick mindset and they've got this kind of craziness to them. The world wouldn't be the world it is without entrepreneurs. It's interesting what you said about buying established businesses, because I've seen a lot of people that are talking about this on YouTube. There's a lot of finance channels that have come about.
I know.
Either
I'm aware.
accountants that are turning their hand to it, or people that are entrepreneurs, etc. It's very popular as well because people want to see what's the secret of the sauce. How do I know?
Right.
They tend to tell you as much as they want to tell you without really the execution implementation part, which is usually a course or something on a one-to-one basis or a group basis, rather. And when it comes to these individuals, one of which in particular, he talks about a lot of people have this misconception that when you buy a business, you have to pay for it all up front or completely out of your own money. And he was saying that's not the case. Yes, people who sell the business might want that, but you could have asset financing, you can have seller financing, where you get the seller to finance the deal, etc. There's lots of ways of going about it, and you could put a deposit down. Sometimes the person was saying no more than 9 or 10% of the actual and asking price. And often if there's a broker involved, which usually is with these businesses on sites, etc., is completely inflated in terms of the asking price, rather than 2 times. They've done it 4 times because that's how they got the business in the first place, and that customer to come along. And the reality is it's not that way. Any thoughts on that before we move on?
The type of financing that I provide, you can buy a business with as little as 10% down, and we can finance the rest. And a lot of businesses, they have seller carrying a note, and that's okay. But again, you have to understand the finances. You have to understand cash flow. You have to understand paying back that seller note. That seller financing is not free. That's also a loan. So you could do that, but you have to be very financially savvy and you have to understand financial models. And again, perfect example. My friend has a lot of money. He doesn't understand financial models. So unfortunately, he's going to be out at least $500,000 very soon when the businesses that he's invested in, I know, don't pan out.
He was an entrepreneur, right?
Yes, he started his own business, was very successful in the business that he started. Okay.
Yeah.
And then thought, okay, I'm going to go and invest in other businesses. But he doesn't understand financial modeling. He doesn't know how to read financials. He doesn't know what goes into a successful business. I do this all day long. So that within 2 minutes of talking to someone, I can tell you, yes, this is a viable business that you should invest in or lend to, which is the same thing. Oh, no, you can't. Most people don't have that. So he sees a business and this seems like a great business. The founder is so into it. This sounds great. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, but the numbers don't make sense. The projections don't make sense. Because in the projections, everyone's going to be, in 2 years, we're going to be $20 million, plugging up $20 million profitability. Where is that coming from? Based on what? What makes you think that you're going to go from $500 to $20 million in 2 years? How's that going to happen? And unless you understand those things, you're not going to make the right investment decisions in businesses.
And are they startups or established businesses?
One of them was a startup and the other one was an established business. And I know because he sends them to me and he says, hey, what do you think? This is a great business. Why don't you invest? And I'm like, are you kidding? Like, I would give $1 to this business. Now, Will there be aberrations, again, outliers where maybe one of these businesses will hit? Maybe, but highly unlikely.
Because they say when buying a business, buy a business, not buy a job. By that is most businesses, 99% of UK businesses is small business.
Sure. In the US too.
Yeah. And much of them, if you were to buy it, you're really just buying a job. You want to buy the business,
Right.
but not be in the business. So you need a good management team. You need to have that things set up there where you can enhance, you can improve, rather than
Right.
just actually, you're not buying a business at all. You're just buying yourself a job. And that's one of the issues that people have. What would you say if anyone listening to this, and there are people who are solopreneurs in the world of work, been a headhunter for the last 26 years all around the world that I've done, that they're thinking, okay, we've talked about all of these kind of aspects. What is a good business? What is a good business from someone who's an expert who does these kind of mergers, acquisitions, and business financial models?
A good business is a business that you're passionate about. Without passion for that particular thing, you're going to go nowhere. A good business for you is a business that you have knowledge about, that you have experience in that business, whether you've worked with someone in that business before, whether you've consulted in that industry. So you have to have industry experience. That's a good business. And another business is an established business that's been around for at least 3 years and that it is cash flow positive. Because if the business does not have positive cash flow, that means that after paying off all your debts, after paying off all your monthly payments, all of that, that you have money left over. And how much money is left over after you've paid everything off? What is your profit? So you have to look at all of those. And a lot of people are like, I love this business. They don't know very much about the cash flow. They don't understand, okay, if they're not profitable now, when can they be profitable? What are the projections? What are the projections based on? You have people that go and get MBAs. This is what investment bankers are for, that make $1 million a year. That's why they make $1 million a year, is because they know how to do this stuff. If everybody knew how to do this stuff, you wouldn't need investment bankers. Okay. I think those are the biggest factors. And a business that is not going to go away. So you have to think about the future, right? You have to think with AI coming, with a lot of changes in technology. Is this business still going to be viable 10 years from now?
Yeah, I once had interactions, a few times, with Grant Cardone, and he always talks about, and he wears his baseball cap, cash flow is king. Cash flow is king.
Absolutely. Without it, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. And it does make sense. And his argument was, and I said this to the founder of Symbiotica, who we've had on the podcast, that
I love their products, by the way.
Yeah, they are good. He said, there's no point having a business if you don't scale a business. Just have a job.
Right.
You're better off with a job.
Absolutely. You have to understand how to make it grow, right? You have to understand how it's going to grow. And really, what is your exit plan? And if you really want to become rich, you build a business that's going to be bought out by a larger company. That's how you do it. But one thing that people really lose sight of is that the people that have those huge windfalls, that have built this amazing business that gets bought out by Apple or by Amazon or whatever, these people never did it for the money. Never. These people were passionate about it. Steve Jobs never did it for the money. Never. And these are people that have been passionate about the product that they have. They knew how to make it better, and it was for the greater good. It was not about the money. The money comes after you build the business. And if you're doing it for the money, again, You have to be passionate. Money can be a factor, but you really have to be passionate about what you're doing.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and I've held discussions and debates around, are you better off born rich or smart?
Smart.
And yeah, but I think the consensus that we reached was, if you have money and you're smart, you can be epic. Because the reason I say that is, like, a lot of the most successful entrepreneurs did come from quite a good background, not in terms of always the best family background. So the Musks are phenomenally successful. Even his dad was successful, Elon Musk. Then you've got Jeff Bezos. I think the first investors in Amazon was his own family, in terms of the first funding.
He doesn't come from money.
And then you've got Mark Zuckerberg. He went to Harvard. You're not dirt poor if you're going to Harvard, etc. And Bill Gates of Microsoft. Yeah, his mother-in-law, I think, had contacts with IBM in order to sign off.
He had access to computers early.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was thinking, if you come from nothing, it's really hard to become something unless you have you have to have some form of leverage. Without some form of leverage, it's very difficult to be truly successful. What do I mean by that? Either a talent, so whether it's in the world of sport or entertainment, where you break that poverty chain and you become epic. A lot of footballers do that. That's why at times they're not very good with their money. Mike Tyson's and stuff, where they get all this money, but they haven't got financial literacy. Then they end up spending on all this kind of stuff, which bankrupts them in the end. Education, networks, or financial help. Without those four aspects of either a talent, education, networks, or financial help, if you come from nothing, very tough. Very tough. Would you agree?
I agree with you, but I also think the biggest killer of success is childhood affluence. So you're naming these people that Musk or whatever, but there are hundreds of billionaires out there and millionaires that came from nothing. The people that have come from nothing are more successful overall as far as business is concerned than people that came from wealth. There are a lot of people that are wealthy that have zero motivation because they don't have to work. They don't have to hustle. The people that you're naming, all of them, any person that I'm reading the book, it's called Burn Book. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's about, it's a really good book, and it talks about the rise of the tech industry. And the people that you're naming, every single one of them has been called ruthless because they have this fire and passion inside them to succeed and to be better than anybody else. And in fact, Jeff Bezos, she said that I had no doubt that he would eat my face if he had to in order to succeed, right? Not a lot of rich people have that ambition. Not a lot of people have that drive. Like you're talking about billionaires. Have you heard of the All In podcast? Have you ever listened to them?
I have heard of that, but I haven't listened to it.
It's an excellent podcast. Four billionaires. All of them came from nothing. All of them. One of them, his father was a doctor, so I wouldn't say he came from nothing, but upper middle class, right? Not enough to but the rest of them all came from nothing. And those are the stories that we don't hear. Those are the stories that we don't look at. We're always looking at the outliers, saying, oh, he had this to help him. He had that. And even Elon Musk, his father was successful, but as far as the seed money to get him to where he is, that didn't come from family. Elon's a brilliant person. And
Absolutely.
Again, these are outliers in society. Not everyone is as brilliant as Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg.
Another key to success, they say, is actually trauma. No one wants it. But for example, Elon Musk had a horrible childhood, apparently.
Yes.
And his relationship with his dad, quite complicated and a strange one. Then you
Yep.
have Oprah Winfrey and everything she went through.
Mm-hmm.
And you also have even the likes of Trump, that
Mm-hmm.
the reason why a lot of people say he doesn't like to lose is that
Mm-hmm.
his father once said to him, Donald, nothing worse in life than being a loser. Never be a loser. So there is a lot to that. But the reality is as well, in terms of being a billionaire, the chances of being a billionaire is 0.0, let's call it this way. And the chances of being a
Right. Absolutely.
multi-millionaire in the UK,
Mm-hmm.
multi-millionaire, is 0.2%,
Mm-hmm.
and in the United States, 1.3%.
Yeah.
However, everything starts with a dream. And if you don't
Right.
aim for the moon, you'll never hit the stars, right? It's all about fulfilling your potential, your deck of
Absolutely.
cards, your potential, whatever that is, where you can look in the mirror and you think, I gave it everything, I did everything, I maximize me. Because let's face it, not everyone can be an Elon Musk, not everyone can
Sure.
be a
And
Jeff
you
Bezos.
don't
It's
have to
not,
be.
no, and
Right.
there is that societal pressure on this is the definition of success and this is what it's all about. But some of those people can be the most miserable people on earth. I've seen interviews with Elon Musk, for example. Someone asked him once, are you happy? And he said, yeah, I was happy once. And he's always a bit thoughtful in his
Correct.
answer and very profound. So that you need financial freedom because it gives
Mm-hmm.
you options and choice. I'd rather have, it gives you a better form of misery. Let's put it that way. If you have,
Yes.
if you're miserable and broke, as opposed to miserable and rich, I know which I would choose all day long because
Yeah. I
you've
mean,
got
I've
options
been
and you've
rich.
got choice.
Right. I've been rich. I've been poor. Rich is better.
Yeah, it is. It is. No, it is just a fact. Second to health, it really is.
Yeah.
We've delved a lot into that. I think the gist of it is the vast majority just don't have financial literacy. And it's something I've learned and I'm still learning as I've gone
Right.
through the entrepreneurial journey because I didn't have any mentors really. I had to
Me
learn as I
neither.
go along and make my
Mm-hmm.
mistakes and everything else. And that's why it's so important to have mentors, I think, and role models or coaches or stuff like that. Because if you do have that, it's great because we're not born into this world of knowledge. It's about knowing more, becoming
Right.
better. Otherwise, you're going to go through the hard school of knocks. You'll learn that way, but it's better to have people around you that you can learn and aspire from. So,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of yourself, we talked about the finances. You're also very passionate about empowerment of women
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
what does that mean? Tell us more about that.
Yeah. I think that I grew up in a family where my mother was very successful. Both of my parents were very successful in Iran, and my mother worked throughout the time that we were in Iran. And what I noticed there is the power balance between my father and my mother when my mother worked, and she had even a better career than my father. She worked for the Shah. When we moved to the United States, due to the language barrier, my mother, she was the head nurse of the Shah's hospital when we were in Iran. And when we came here, due to the language barrier, she couldn't pass the nursing exam. And my father, again, because of a language barrier, he used to be the import export business and he just couldn't do that here. But what I saw is the shift of the power dynamics when my mother didn't work. And it came over time. And I noticed that after a while that my father really held over my mother's head that he was the one that's making all the money. So he would be able to control how we spent it, what we spent it on, and it just gained so much power in the relationship because my mother didn't have financial means. And when they would get into arguments about something, my dad would be like, "What are you going to do? You can't leave. You don't have any money." And my mother would always take me in the room and be like, listen, do you see what's happening to me? You always make your own money. You always stand on your own 2 feet and you never allow any man to control you with money. I don't care how much money he has. And I saw the destruction of my parents' lives happen because of the power dynamics and the lack of choices that my mother had because she didn't have her own money. And at the end of the day, money is power. Okay. That's all money is. And if you don't have money, you will lose power in the relationship. And that is where my passion comes from, to empower women, especially through their finances. They don't end up like my mother, and they understand how important it is to be able to support themselves, because money will give you options, and you don't know when you need those options and when you're going to want those options. And if you don't have money, you're not going to have any options to leave or to have a say so in the relationship. And then next thing you know, you're stuck.
Yeah, really profound and completely makes sense. And it doesn't make you a bad person by that happening. It's just that the realities of
Sure.
life is you got pressures, bills, stuff like that. I remember a lot of the times, even in my own household, I felt if only for money, things would be much better in terms of
Right.
my parents and how they were and everything
Right.
else, because it was always money that was the problem.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Why this wasn't happening, that wasn't happening, arguments kicking off left, right, and center, etc. And it does. And when you are dependent on someone for it, and if life is difficult, I think that person sometimes will react to things and say, well, you're not spending that or you're not doing that. And that's it, because maybe that person has
Correct.
got the weight on his shoulders, looking after a
Right.
family, everything's on them,
Yes.
the pressure's there, and there's a disconnect. And then the other person feels ostracized, where they feel like this, I feel like a child almost, and it's difficult. I
Right.
don't have much sense of power. And it can be a bit of a vicious cycle. You get maybe some who do it for kicks or whatever, but generally speaking, it's
Mm-hmm.
because of circumstance or life. Iranian women are very strong characters. Not all,
Mm-hmm.
but generally speaking,
Yeah, but we are
the
generally,
Iranian
absolutely.
lionesses. Um, do you think that fundamentally has changed now? Because we've created an economy, I think, that it's very hard to just have one form of income coming in the house. We've created an economy which
Right.
you must have more than one form of income, where both parties are earning, whether it's full-time, part-time, and also multiple streams of income. And if you don't have these things, it's going to be very tough for you to be wealthy and to make the money that you want and to have the life you want.
I, I do think that's one aspect of having empowerment in a relationship, is making the money. But I think we also need to consider, actually, the most important aspect is who controls the money. So while there are dual household incomes, a lot of the times the man controls the money and the finances. And the reason for that is that we have been brainwashed as women to believe that we're not good with money. He's better with money than we are. I can't tell you how many women I know that make their own money that have no idea how their bills get paid, how much money they have, what assets they have. They just hand it right over to their husband because he's supposed to be better at money, where study after study shows the women are just better investors than men are. When we're given money, we make more out of it than the men do. But I think the brainwashing that women have gone through to say that, you know what, you need to just hand over the money, and a man is really supposed to provide and protect. And you are supposed to be like, the men were the hunters and women were the gatherers. And which is complete bullshit, by the way. A study has shown that women hunted right along with the men and went to war right along with the men. And that whole hunter and gatherer nonsense was just another BS way of keeping women down. And once we understand that it's not just about making money, but controlling our own money, that's when we become powerful, because there's no point in making money if you can't control it.
Yeah, I'm just letting that digest, because they're very strong points. And I'm just thinking, why are women better investors? What's the theory behind that?
I can tell you,
Go on.
and this is not a theory. This is just facts that from studies, is that we don't think we know everything. We're not these like men are just so confident in their abilities that they're like, they keep trading quickly. That's the worst thing you can do when it comes to investing is keep buying and selling. That's the worst thing you can do. You're supposed to buy and just hold, right? Men buy and sell a lot more than women do because they have this thing of overconfidence. Women are more prudent. Women do their research more. And women are more afraid of losing their money than men are. So that's why we're better investors.
Yeah. They also say that women are better salespeople.
Yeah. Yes. And again,
especially in
because we
financial
listen.
services, etc., because of the listening part.
Yes.
Yeah, because
Absolutely.
what makes a great salesperson is the 80-20 rule. You should spend 80%
Sure.
of the time listening, 20% of the time selling. And I think the
Right.
bravado and guys, being guys, generally, there are great salespeople out there that maybe the listening is not always there in terms of the selling.
Yeah. That's why I kick their ass every day of the week. Because I listen.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's the dream? What's the dream for you?
I think the dream for me is really to be able to expand my platform of empowering women through their finances and really doing that as a full-time job. That is really my ultimate goal. I have a book coming out next summer. It's called Never Date a Broke Dude. And
Love
it's
the
not
title.
just, and it's really not just
through
about
personal experience.
Yes, exactly. I dated a broke dude. Exactly. And everything in this book is about my personal experience, but it's not just about never date a broke dude. It's the two most important things to provide freedom for women is having their finances in check, being able to build wealth and who they choose to marry. Those are the two most important things when it comes to a woman's freedom in society. And I dig into first, we talk about confidence, how women typically don't have the same level of confidence in men, how to build that up. Then we talk about how you should behave in the work environment to get that raise, to get that promotion and the mistakes around that. Then we talk about how you should be in relationships as far as money, who handles what, how many bank accounts do you need, how do you contribute to your finances. And then lastly, we talk about money. Exactly how to invest, step-by-step instructions, financial literacy section. So I think all of those combined is a really holistic approach to making women successful in their lives. And that is really my passion. And that's really my dream of where I want all of this to go.
And it's a great mission to have. Would you say you're a hustler?
Oh my God. Yes. I have a plaque on my desk that says every day I'm hustling. Yeah, I've hustled my whole life, Johnny. As a kid, I remember I was 10 years old and I would go door to door trying to collect people's trash in our apartment building, hoping they would give me a quarter so I could go and buy pizza down the street. And it's really, again, you were saying, it comes from trauma. It comes from not having. It comes from feeling like I was less than. It comes from having to prove to the world that I am worthy. And it's really sad to say, but that's what's gotten me to where I am is I'm always feeling like I have to prove something. And that's what gives me my work ethic.
Yeah, I can relate to that. And
yeah,
it's that fire in you, that burning fire. I think in the end, happiness is about having fulfillment.
Absolutely.
But you can't have that without courage in order to go for things in life. And it takes courage to get freedom. Because without courage, there is no freedom. And
you have to have the courage to fail.
Yeah. And I think essentially people would love to be in a place where they have the freedom to do what they want rather than playing with the handbrake on in life as opposed to the handbrake off. And I think essentially if you can be free, it's a glorious and wonderful thing. I've really enjoyed the podcast. It's been a great chat. how can people reach out to you with about your book, about what you're doing with your podcast,
Sure.
your socials?
Sure. I have a website, pattyaside.com, and that has everything you need to know. There's an investment course on there. There's a lot of free information, free resources. I have everything that I'm invested in on my website. That's a great place to start. And also on TikTok and Instagram at Duchess of Decorum. You can find me there.
You come up with some great titles. Never dated
You're
a
British. That's
broke
why you like
dude.
the
Yeah.
Duchess thing.
Yeah, you come up with great titles indeed. I found it fascinating. It's been an eye opener. I really enjoyed the time and the conversation. So thanks very much, Patty.
Thanks, Johnny. This was really fun. Thank you for your time.